Welcome back, everyone. This is the 8th episode of The Fool's Journey, a descent into the tarot, where we take a look at the Major Arcana from the Rider-Waite, mainly from the Rider-Waite version. This is episode 8, and in the last episode we left off in the Devil, the card number 15. So today, me and Silas, Armunn, Righ, and Silas with me, are going to begin with the Tower card, and then we'll see. Welcome, Silas.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, as always. So, Silas, let's begin there. The Tower, I mean, this is, for several reasons, and especially since 2001, has been a very well-recognized card due to its symbolism. So, what do you have for us to open this discussion?
Well, the Tower itself has a sort of multi-layer of symbolism surrounding it. The first thing we should mention is that the idea of the Tower and its link to the event of 2001. The Tower itself is almost a symbol of man's folly, but it's also, as well, as we see on the Rider-Waite, it's also a symbol of the obelisk. The obelisk itself is that phallic symbol. If we were to look at it in terms of the Saturn moon matrix, of course the two, Boaz and Yakin, the two pillars being the sort of womb, the receptive mechanism or the receptive device of that matrix, the pillar of knowledge, the middle point, would of course be Saturn. Funnily enough as well, if you read the Rider-Waite pictorial companion to his tarot, he actually corresponds this Tower card with the Ayin, and that was also present within the Golden Dawn system. Now, the letter Ayin, if you trace that back, is essentially in its pictographic form, hieroglyphic form as well, the eye. So it's linked to this Eye of Providence idea as well, and it's linked with Saturn. It's quite a Saturnine card, though it also has Martian tendencies as well. It's a card of destruction, it's a card of a quickening of change, it's a card of sudden change as well, of misery and distress, calamity. It's also associated with the Shevret HaKalim within Kabbalah, which is the shattering of the vessels. You see that with the lightning bolt. Bowie famously, of course, a Kabbalist, by his own admission, was the Starman, and of course he left this world as the Black Star. So the lightning bolt itself is associated with this pathway of descent down the Sephirotic tree of life, or the Sephirotic tree of knowledge, however you want to look at it. We also see as well the Saturnine symbol, or the Cronian symbol of the crown. We also had, remember, the corona. So the corona event, or the corona virus, in Latin, literally the poisoning of the crown, or the crown of poison, or the poison crown. All of that links with Saturn. Saturn and Kronos obviously overthrew his father, Kalos or Uranus, by mutilation of him. He usurped the crown, hence, in symbolic terms and mythologically, that planetary archetype of Saturn has always been associated with kingship, and the kingdom as well. Of course, not necessarily he's not associated with Malkuth, which literally is the kingdom in Hebrew and in the Kabbalistic system, but he is the ordinator of it, the arbiter of it, the king, the kingly presence that resides above it, the Keter.
Wouldn't it be, Silas, at least from, again, my more intuitive outlook on these symbologies, wouldn't it be that this is actually Uranus or Kalos taking back the crown, or taking back the, let's say, control from Saturn? Because Saturn has always been associated with the walls, right? So building buildings and, constructing things that last time. He's also associated with time, right? So would this be, for example, because you see the tower here as a symbol of potency, a symbol of kingship as well, due to the crown at the top, and then you see this unexpected lightning bolt, and Uranus is usually associated with the unexpected. Also, he is Caelus, which literally in Latin means sky. So the lightning bolt is coming from the sky, hitting the tower, toppling the crown, and basically burning down the structure that was built by Saturn, right? And this is particularly of importance, in my opinion, because the previous card was the devil, right? And we have discussed in the previous episode how the devil enslaved man almost voluntarily. So what I mean to say is that man offered themselves to this slavery. The chains were loose. There were several things that we looked at, and it seems that that mankind has built this tower, which could also be associated with that Tower of Babel scenario that we've talked privately. We can go a bit into that if you like. But so this would be that destruction of the Tower of Babel, toppling the kingship, basically throwing people down, the people that thought that they had this figured out and control over things, and Uranus just comes and cleans house, basically, right? What do you think about that? Do you think that would be, because it is obvious that the Saturn symbolism is there, but to me it is there in the form of the tower being toppled, you understand? And then it's something unexpected that actually breaks the control of Saturn. What do you say?
I think that's a very astute observation. And also as well, you see with the lightning bolt too, of course we have this idea of course, the oscillations of time with the W shape, but that could also link with Cassiopeia, which perhaps in its shorthand would be Sophia. So that idea of the divine feminine, which is locked in the glacial code of matter, is the sort of broadly speaking, the Gnostic mythology purported. Again, broadly speaking. So it's that idea that written within the heart of man is the organic cycles. It's the actual true God, the true heir to the throne of the cosmos. And periodically, and we were talking about this, the distinction between the artificial cycles, which of course is encompassed, and you rightly stated, it's encompassed by that artificial structure of the tower. That is juxtaposed to, of course, the organic cycles, and of course the artificial seeks to try and find a loophole around the organic. Saturn, Kronos, will always seek to try and usurp the throne of heaven that his father holds. Similar, of course, in the Norse pantheon too, with Odin, Vili and Righ, and their betrayal of Ymir within Ginnungagap. Moreover as well, the tower itself is very much a reflection, a microcosmic reflection, an artificial imitation. We were talking about memory and the distinction between memory and mimetics, and perhaps memories themselves are, false, if you will. Most are false if they're cultural. They're not memory, they're mimetics, they're imitations, they're mimicry.
Memes.
And memes, exactly, yeah. Meme magic.
Yeah.
And so the tower itself is essentially reflecting, it's mirroring what is in the heavens, the tower of the heavens. The Greeks called it the Empyrean, the concentric layers, right? Of course, the Empyrean itself is a two-dimensional view of that. You're almost viewing a wormhole, if you will. But if you were to look at that three-dimensionally, or from another sort of profile view, a side profile, it would look like a tower. So this wormhole concept, of course, is found in nature too. We're born into this world through the fallopian tube, which looks somewhat like a wormhole too, you could say. You also see in pop culture references, recently I was watching Gattaca, when Ethan Hawke's character, I forget his character's name now, when his character leaves, he steals the identity. Well, he doesn't steal the identity, there's a voluntary exchange of identity between Jerome, or Jude Law's character, and his character when he's leaving to, I think it's the moon of Titan, it's the moon of Saturn, which is Titan. That itself is interesting, to say the least, right? Given that Kronos and Saturn was a Titan, and the Titanomachy and all of this. He leaves through this tube, and it looks, again, very distinct, like a wormhole, and there are 7 rings. So we were talking about Boaz and Yakin. In both the Hebrew Aleph-Bet, or the alphabet, and the English alphabet, there are 7 letters between Boaz and Yakin. So you get this 7 again, which of course links with Saturn too. In classical astronomy, it's the 7th planet. There's other 7s too that interlink with esoteric symbolism. It seems to be a number of control, a number of time, a number of perhaps order. We see it with the 7 chakras as well. So yeah, I absolutely agree with your observation there. Also, something to add too, the toppling of the crown. You see that on that crown there are 4 arches leading up to that apex of the dome. And again, the crown itself almost looks like an eye, right? Again, the eye-in of Saturn. But then there are 3 protrusions, almost spikes, horns that protrude out from the base, or the primary part of the crown. So that could also link with Kabbalah, and it's obviously this means something entirely different in English, but in Hebrew it's called the prophecy of the Shet, and the Shet is the Shin and the Tav letter, the penultimate and the ultimate letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's said that in the primordial times these were conjoined to form the letter Shet. Another connection is that the 3-pronged Shin and the 4-pronged Shin, which of course you see on the crown, you also saw it as well within the Devil card, is that the 4 is above the 3. However, in the Devil card you saw that the 3 was above the 4. What does that mean? Well, that the Shin letter that has 3 prongs, that is said to be the Shin of this world. However, the Shin letter with 4 prongs upon it is said to be the Shin of the world to come. So one is of the supernal and one is of the infernal, and whatever one is of course above the other shows what state the world is in. That of course links with the 4 and the 3, because Shin is 300 and Tav is 400, so there is that connection. They
seem
there
to be full of that prophecy, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, the bullshit.
Bullshit, yeah. But in any way, you mentioned something about that caught my ear, which was that they tried to circumvent, or that Saturn, this Saturnian energy, tries to circumvent the inevitable confrontation, let's say, the inevitable destruction that comes to its structures, its built structures. And, my observation led me to conclude that most of what we're going through right now is a demolition of society and of even, mental structures, false memories, if you like, which does not mean that they will be replaced by something organic, but replaced by different false memories. But the idea is, if you can, so that it's an organic and natural cycle for your tower to be taken down, right? So for your structure of the crown to be taken down, and this is why you certainly depict In the 16th step, let's say, of the Fool's Journey, you depict this very important event. Now, we look back and know that in 2001, what happened was not a space odyssey per se, but a demolition, very fantasized demolition of, the symbols of exactly that structure. So instead of allowing it to fall down, if you take it down voluntarily, how will that organic toppling take place, right? Because, of course, we're talking a symbol, and we're talking also about actually applying it onto the collective psyche, right? So if you know that inevitably, let's say you're a builder, right, and you do build structures, so you know that, it is predicted that perhaps this building will last 50 years, okay? It has, let's say, okay, you can guarantee that for 50 years the building will be okay. If you know that after 50 years it's going to inevitably crumble, it may be at, in its 50th year, or 51, or 55, or 60, it doesn't matter, but you know that after that threshold, there is a danger of it crumbling if, left unmaintained, but let's not put that into the equation right now. What if you take it down, right? Knowing that it would inevitably crumble, so you control the demolition, you know where the debris are going to fall, you can even reuse some of the materials, and then you build back better, which is a sentence that we've heard recently several times. So if you're able to take it down, you certainly push into the future that organic crumbling, and by building a new one that might even last a bit longer, or even if it doesn't, it will buy you some more time before that inevitable confrontation. So in a sense, by mimicking what happens in the Tower card symbolically, right, you avoid what happens in that card organically. I don't know if I made myself understood or not, but I don't know if you followed.
Absolutely. Well, that's also really conveyed within the imagery too. Mm-hmm. Again, the tower is burning, but the tower is its envelope is created out of stone. Mm. So thus it's created of mineral. Mineral, of course, is not flammable. It's quite impervious to the combustibility of the lightning bolt coming from heaven, striking it. So ultimately, if we were to extrapolate that symbolism into what you just stated, they may, who knows if the lightning seems to have toppled the crown, but did the crown itself start the fire, right? There's this question in our mind. Did it do that to almost offset, or again, as we were saying, delay or slow the velocity of that organic cycle?
I'm sorry, mm-hmm. Silas, to interject there, but I'm not saying that, for example, the lightning bolt is organic and the fire is inorganic, is staged. What I'm saying is that let's imagine that what is depicted here is an organic event, okay, that is somehow inevitable, be it in the sky clock of astrology, time cycles, whatever it is, okay? Let us imagine that this is an inevitable event that always has to occur. If you stage it, so you build a tower, and before the time that it would organically fall, you make it fall, right? And by you making it fall, you can control where the debris fall, who gets hurt or not. You can even reuse some of the materials, and then you build another one afterwards, using that, necessary buildup of, there's always some buildup of resentment, then there's a buildup of hope. I mean, the next card is the star, right? So star is the hope. And you use it You use those energies in an artificial way to prevent the organic event. So what I am saying is that the event depicted here is entirely organic, but they are avoiding it by putting it on the stage. You understand? By making a theater play out of this event. I don't know if you're following that.
I am following it. I see it. I see it slightly, not necessarily differently, but I think what it's attempting to convey is that the tower itself has been there since time immemorial. That it is made of stone. It's made of the lowest form of life, that which contains no sentience of its own, but it is, of course, can be acquired by sentience. It can be possessed by it. It can do the bidding of sentience. As you've seen here, it's fashioned into this tower. But the tower itself is almost akin to this structure of the cosmos itself. Of course, the tower in this sense is artificial, because the entire system that they have established, it is at its crux a microcosmic reflection of the grander macrocosm. You have this macrocosmic wheel, of whose structure effectively is wheels within wheels within wheels within wheels, a bit like the wheel of samsara. That itself, if it was viewed from a profile view, a three-dimensional structure would emerge, and that structure is that of a tower of whose levels are constructed via vertical spirals, emanating upwards, all the way back, of course, to a singular point where all potential was contained. So it's this idea, you see the same thing with the tower, with the people falling from the tower too, that their tails are up and their heads are down. That idea, of course, or their feet are up and their heads are down. Same idea. You see the same thing in Guildenstern and Rosencrantz are dead. That is, as soon as they enter spiritual involution, symbolically represented by them entering as actors and spectators at time, and of course both in equal measure, into the play, then they flip the coin. Previously they were breaking all laws of probability and incessantly getting heads up and tails down. Now they got tails up and heads down, which of course is the same symbolism of the people falling from the tower. Spiritual involution. They're literally falling into matter. But of course what we're seeing is this artificial sense of this, which is that they get to such a point in the civilizational arc or blueprint, like what you stated, and then they collapse back downwards. There's a mass correction born of the shadows accumulated by the civilization itself through the arc of its script, through the arc of the fulfillment of the blueprint, essentially. And I totally agree with what you're saying. I just look at it differently. I believe that what we're seeing is that the stone tower is that of an organic or natural thing. That it's almost established, artificially of course, but it's established to create this flavour of the organic. Of course that's completely fictitious, and it's superficial, but it's done to almost ward off, or to preempt, like what you were stating, or to even circumvent the organic cycle of the tower. Again, unlike brick, it is a natural material, so therefore there is a certain naturalness, if you will, to the system, which of course the tower symbolises, that it is periodically destroyed. Now that can either be done organically, or it can be done artificially. But I agree with what you're saying. There's a certain dramatic flair to what you're seeing going on. It's very... It almost looks shocking what's taking place, and you see the male and the female, the way that they're falling. It's almost, of course, they're falling quite some feet, but they look hyperbolic, right? They look like it's almost cartoonish. It's a caricature of a fall.
Yeah.
It's attempting to, like what actors would do, like what a stage performance would be. Quite rightly, with what you're, I think, intimating, is that they're attempting to convey. Pardon me. They're attempting to convey in a very hyperbolic or exaggerated manner that this is the end of an age. This is the end of perhaps a cycle. It's the end of this tower. But the tower itself can be rebuilt, because the shell, the husk of the tower still remains out of the natural stone, as opposed to, say, the artificial brick. However, I agree with what you're stating as well. Even if the tower did fall, you would always have those stones that obviously made up as the constituent members of the structure. They could be used again to rebuild another tower. But inevitably it's the same symbolism that is being conveyed. It's just a different way of perhaps framing it. And of course, you even have the various levels of that tower, which of course would be constructed of wood, conceivably. So therefore, when the fire rages through that tower, so they can simply just rebuild every level, while the cubic stone envelope still there remains. And of course it's a slow burn as well. That's how these towers would burn. There's a slow burn, similar to a tower furnace. We'll get into that. And within alchemy, it's a slow, protracted burn, a bit like the collapse of an age or the transition to another age. So even though the beginning of the cycle may be devastating, right? The beginning of that transition to another age, that transitionary cycle, I mean, even though it is rapid, it is, like lightning, it snaps into attack. The devastation that is wrought from that single spark of lightning is something that is protracted. And it's something, of course, that we see within our own age, our own transitionary cycle between 2001 and 2050, right? Which is the 7 times 7 years, the 49-year cycle, up to the new age. And 2001, of course, was the gateway year. It was literally the collapse of the towers. And that was a rapid, shocking, lightning attack, designed for shock and awe. That was the gateway year. That was what started the fire. It's what toppled the crown of the previous age, of the European and Western civilization. And the fire that was being contained is a smouldering ember underneath the crown, was then exposed to the elements, exposed to oxygen. And of course, oxygen only intensifies that ember, and so does, of course, the energies of the heavens, of the sky, the lightning, which then reignites that fire. The fire in Greek is obviously pure. That's how it's pronounced, pure. So purification is done via the fire. It can only be done via the fire. That's how all of the ages end. A baptism by fire. You will have in the middle of an age a baptism by water. But the final civilizational throe of death shall be done via fire. Again, that leaves the smouldering ruins. This may even link as well to the idea of the plasma reset, We see a lot of these even subterranean and cavernous constructions under the ground. Cities, subterranean cities and things like that, all appearing to be from a similar period in time. Again, it's a very strange occurrence. Were they hiding from something? Was there a geophysical event that drove them underground, seeking refuge? You also see quite a lot of cities and settlements built into the sides of cliff faces and the cliff wall, and they look burned. They appear to have a certain patina on them that looks like it's sustained damage either via water erosion or damage via fire. So again, it lends credence to this idea of the plasma reset, the plasma apocalypse, the fire from the sky, the fire in the sky. So it's this idea too. Again, that heralds, as the fire does, as we see within essentially all eschatologies. The Norse eschatology, for example, Ragnarok or the Götterdämmerung. This idea of the twilight of the gods, the war of the gods, it always ends with Yggdrasil, literally the tower, the trunk of the world tree itself, by Surtur, the Jötnar of fire, the giant of fire. The Jötnar were the monstrous and malefic opponents of the Aesir, and of course the Vanir as well. But also, like Uranus was also betrayed. He was mutilated, like Ymir, the unconsciousness of being itself, that being which is unconscious of its own being. That every artificial escape from the organic cycles, or attempting to preempt the organic cycles, attempting to vent preemptively those accumulated shadows from the original sin which cleaved the unconscious being from consciousness itself. Eventually, like what we see of the Jötnar, because the Jötnar were the children, they were the grandchildren, they were the offspring of Ymir directly. So therefore, they were the ones who were opposed to the Aesir, because they saw the Aesir, interestingly, Aesir and Asura are similar, but they saw the Aesir as the evil ones, as the elements, the artificial, that which destroyed the peace within Gununga Gap. And it was the Jötnar, in their negative, negating principle that they embodied, attempting to bring being back to its serene, unconscious state, back into the dissolution of all things, even time and space itself. So it's things like this. This is what we're seeing throughout mythology, throughout symbolism. These themes, extremely profound motifs, by the way. They get to almost the heart, quite literally the heart of beingness and consciousness itself, of the cosmogony. And what it also intimates to you is that whoever developed these cross-culturally interconnected, confluential mythologies and stories, and of course the metaphors that they're attempting to convey, that metaphorical meaning, it tells you that they had a deep understanding of consciousness, of etiology, meaning where did the world come from, right? Eschatology, how does the world end? And cosmogony, what are the origins of the cosmos? And to psychology as well. I mean, they understood all of these concepts in a very multidisciplinary manner. I can imagine even in a autodidact manner, meaning they were self-educated, because you only get this level of understanding through self-education. You can't go to an academic institution and learn this. This is not something that can be conveyed through textbook. It's based upon Nosis, which is experiential knowledge. You have to gain a sort of string of epiphanies, deep, soulful realizations to grasp this sort of these concepts. And some of the concepts still elude me. Totally elude. In fact, I'll be looking at this until I draw my last breath on this planet. But this priest class who developed all of these myths, these multi-layered with meaning, they understood all of this in a very deep and profound way. That cannot be understated. And very similar, of course, to the Hindu god Agni, where we get our word igneous from, fire. So it surrounds this idea of fire and the purification therefrom. So it lends credence to those ideas too. However, and of course, like what you were saying, what remains is the roots. The roots appear to regrow the tree from the Dark Age, again, the roots are contained in the subterranean realms, the chthonic regions, that does not see sunlight. It doesn't see the golden glow, the golden age, if you will. So therefore, that is where the tree rebuilds itself from. It rejuvenates itself from that. But there will always be an ember that survives that cataclysmic fire. And of course, within the Norse mythology, it's Leaf and Leithrarcir, quite literally life and the zest for life, or the will to live, that survives. Essentially Adam and Eve, the couple which, gives birth to the new species, the new human race within that new age, post-date in the Dark Age. So all of this is contained in the tower, in that notion of the tower itself. So it's all of these things I think it's toying with. But I do see where you're coming from. I just see it slightly differently.
So you see it as a mix of stage play and an organic thing happening to cover. So the stage play covers the organic, in your opinion.
Yes, or if we were to view this as, say, an actual reset out with, directly out with its symbolic confines. Mm-hmm. What you're seeing, the way the media would spin a collapse or a reset, it would exaggerate it. It would exaggerate it because it seeks that emotional, that sort of drama that brings forth, it cultivates that emotional response from people. Of course, the emotional response is not just politically expedient, right? Mm-hmm. If you bring people into a state of shock and awe, then of course they're far more psychologically malleable. But as well, you could also state that perhaps there's some sort of harvesting, perhaps in a mystical manner, of mundane emotion. The stage performance itself, the system itself, feeds upon that. Like any good actor, you have to get the audience going, right? It's what feeds the play. So there's all of these things, I think, going on in the card. But yeah, I see where you're coming from.
And it's interesting also that the structure is depicted as being atop of a mountain, so a cliff with, there's nothing living around it. It's basically just trying to be as tall as possible and as isolated as possible, which can also sort of link to ivory tower kind of thing, right? Because it is completely withdrawn from the natural soil, the natural cycles of life. This tower is completely artificial, it would seem, and really just set as a symbol per se atop that cliff. Who knows how tall that cliff is? We don't see indication of it, but it's probably very tall. It's amidst the clouds, as we see the clouds in the picture, so it's certainly reaching for the skies like the Tower of Babel would. And in the script that was written about the Tower of Babel, the mention of it in the Bible is that it was prevented, the finishing of the Tower of Babel was prevented by Yahweh, who then took several steps to prevent it from occurring, and established its own rulership by the division and the subsequent separation. But I think, to be honest, although the demolition is in place, I don't think we are at the stage of the Tower of Babel in the script yet, in my opinion. We're getting close. We have AI, which will be certainly one of the big symbols of that unification, both in terms of languages, and languages plays an important role, as is known in the Tower of Babel scenario, but also as a symbol for God itself, of course, false God, but nonetheless a symbol for God. And we are approaching that, but I don't think we're quite there yet. So, although the symbol of the tarot, the Tower Tarot card, appeared in the collective psyche in 2001, we are in 2025, and it hasn't yet been completed. You understand? I don't think that the demolition is completed. It may, if your inference is correct, it may just be waiting for that sign, let's say, that the organic would appear, and then they could use, the Saturnian energy could use that sign as an indication of, okay, we can finish the demolition because the organic demolition, let's say the organic toppling, is about to emerge. I honestly think that it's a matter of, if you can somehow try to fool fate, right? Trick destiny in a way. That is what I think they intend to do with these scripts and blueprints and stage plays. But nonetheless, this is a very powerful card, even if we look at it from a personal level. And from a personal level, I mean, we've all had unfakeable moments that relate to this tower, moments where our lives that we thought were established, routined, that everything was solid, suddenly crumble. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, like when we addressed the death tarot cards, which is usually seen as a bad card, it's a scary card. It can actually be a positive card if it takes away, of course, what doesn't serve us anymore. The tower is that unexpected shift that happens in our lives as well, and it can certainly bring the best out afterwards. In fact, like I said, the next card is the Star, which is hope. It brings hope, it brings a new beginning, it brings a new adventure, let's say, a new stage of the adventure, at a personal level too. But yeah, man, what do you think about what do you think that this organic toppling that you imagine, what shape would it take that they would try to cover up with these stage plays?
I think you hit the nail right on the head with this idea that you're trying to trick fate, and ultimately that's really what you see within the tower card, and of course the tower system as well. That has, you can see, I mean, cross-culturally, that this Tower of Babel motif has appeared, or the tower motif at least has appeared throughout the globe. Really, all cultures have it to some degree. Of course, some don't have the tower per se, but ultimately the tower itself is this artificial axis mundi. It's sought to establish a control over the anima mundi, which is the soul of the world.
Right.
So in fact, you see it in Dark Souls as well, with the Erd tree and the arch trees. The Erd trees Elden Ring, but the Dark Souls have the arch trees. And these arch trees are essentially what hold up the abyss, which is this pure potentiality, I guess you could say, of the dreamer, or perhaps of existence itself. And what you're seeing with the tower is almost like a phantom tree, a phantom cosmic tree. Again, like any sort of malware that gets in a computer system, not meaning to go into simulation theory, but this is it's a way to analogize it, is the overarching, the main operating system will always seek, and of course if it's backed up by antivirus software, it will seek to purge that from the system periodically through, of course, the user's input, which may desire for it to have a scan of the computer to purge these things, and this may be done routinely. So I think that's what you're seeing there with this distinction between Uranus, Kalos, and Saturn, Kronos. So, moreover as well, something to mention is that, so firstly you have the fire. So the fire is a purifying symbol. It is something you always see at the end of a cycle, of a world age. Typically the world ages are divided between two major resets. You will have a reset via water. Again, this is all metaphorical, but you'll have a reset via water or ice, and then a reset via fire, a baptism by fire, as you see in the New Testament.
Right.
So that's where the fire idea comes in. Moreover as well, the fire produces the smoke, as we can see bellowing out from the tower. That smoke itself is akin to incense. It's purified vapor. The vapor, of course, is air, is the element of air. The element of air, in this sense, in its purified sense, via fire, which of course even purification can only be via fire, because obviously pure, which is the root of purification, is fire in Greek. And of course this pure smoke that is bellowing out from the tower is the spirit. It is the vaporous primal element that of course has been trapped in the tower. So what you're seeing with the tower is the reset. Moreover as well, we can also make a link to antimony regulus and the tower furnace. So we may mention as well the connection between the tower furnace, the Athanor, which is an alchemical apparatus, and the star tarot card, which is of course the preceding card following on from the tower. And this links with antimony regulus, which is produced by the processes of the tower furnace. And of course antimony regulus is called the star metal. No coincidence there, of course. You have the tower card and the star card. You have the tower furnace and the star metal. So just to mention something very briefly on that, we can state that so this tower furnace, by the way, was also called the Athanor. That's from an Arabic word, al-tanur. It means quite literally the illumination, the enlightenment. The tower card typically depicts a tall structure being struck by lightning, often with figures falling from it. Symbolically, this can directly be linked to the Athanor, the alchemist's furnace. Destruction and calcination. The lightning striking the tower represents the intense heat and sudden destructive force applied within the Athanor. This mirrors the alchemical process of calcination, where raw matter is subjected to extreme heat to break it down into its most fundamental components. This is effectively putrefaction. Just as the tower is stripped bare, the prima materia in the Athanor is reduced to ash. release and purification. The figures falling from the tower, while seemingly chaotic, can be seen as the release of impurities or solidified forms. In the Athanor, the intense heat not only breaks down, but also purifies, vaporizing the volatile and leaving behind the fixed. This often painful or shocking experience is necessary for genuine transformation. Moreover, as well, as you can see with the tower, you can see the three vents upon it, the three windows. That is also what you have in terms of the tower furnace. They're usually constructed in a sort of triplicity of layers. This triplicity of layers is designed to maintain the constancy of heat over extended periods of time, thus to affect calcination. You'll notice as well that the figures, or the forms that the fire is taking from each of those three windows, it appears to be in the shape of a very stylized, of course, but in the shape of a phoenix, or a phoenix bird. The reason there are three, of course, as well, is this links to the notion of the triangle, the generative symbol, and this is, of course, linking to the tria prima. The tria prima, or the three primes, are effectively found throughout every creation story. In alchemy, of course, it is sulfur, which links with the sun, mercury, which links with the moon, and salt, which links with the earth. This can also be seen as the spirit, the mind, and the body. However, if we were to look at this upon a psycho-spiritual level, what it is, and of course this is found in the Norse mythology of Odin, Vili, and Ve, and the betrayal of the unconscious being within Ymir, and the usage of his corpse to fashion the world and the universe, and the nine worlds, of course, in Yggdrasil, is that Odin, quite literally Vodin as the Lord of Frenzy, he is the son of consciousness, the soul. The soul as in S-O-L and S-O-U-L, both of course are homophones. They're homophones for a reason. They have the same pronunciation. That is because fundamentally the son of consciousness, S-U-N, is exactly what the sun is symbolically. It is the light which casts the shadows and creates dimensionality out of the contours between the interplay of light and dark, or, of course, light and the shadow it casts. So, you have Vodin or Odin, consciousness, quite literally. Vili, will, literally the need to make action, the need to engage in actionable pursuit. That is what creates the causal world. And then, of course, as well, you have to have the enclosure to receive that cause, right? To receive the effect from the cause, to react it. And that is what Ve is. We still use the same abbreviation, of course, if you have something, right? They've, for example, apostrophe VE. So literally have, or to possess, quite literally. The ego, in its Latin phraseology, the I. It is that which differentiates your beingness from another's beingness. Ultimately, this is what the Tria Prima is. It's the descent from unconsciousness, the initial descent into conscious, manifestable doing, into the will, into the ego, into consciousness itself. So continuing on, so the foundation is also shaken. The tower's destruction signifies the dismantling of old structures, beliefs, or fixed states. This aligns with the Athanor's role in dissolving and breaking apart the initial substance, preparing it for reformation, or of course building back better, reset. It's a necessary shattering to move beyond limitations. And then we get on to the antimony regulus and the illuminative regeneration. The Star Tarot card, in contrast, shows a naked woman pouring water from two pitchers, one into a pool and one onto land, under a large bright star and 7 smaller stars. This imagery resonates deeply with the properties and symbolism of antimony regulus, often referred to as star metal. We can also make mention of too that the Star Tarot card is firmly under a sort of Uranian, or under the sign of Uranus, and moreover as well, that means it's of reset. It is of the primordial. And the reason it is the female is because that is Sophia or Cassiopeia in her naked state. Of course, usually she is veiled. She is the Saitic Isis, the veiled Isis. But in this state, she is pregnant with her own potential. She, again, like the Ouroboros, it both eats its own tail and gives birth to its own self in a regenerative, recursive, perpetual process, eternal process. You see the same thing there, that she is completely naked. So meaning we're in the state of revelation. It's the apocalypto, the apocalypse, the revelation, the breaking apart of the old which occurred within the Tower card has now been completely concluded. It has concluded within the Star card, and the hope for renewal after the destruction is coming about. And it's the continuation of the dream without awakening the dreamer or arousing him to lucidity, thus, of course, destroying the dream itself. So the rhythm of the dream is to lull the dreamer into that involuntary autonomous nature that a dreamer would take, so that he does not wake up. Again, like Orion, the headless god, that he does not wake up, that he does not become lucid, that he does not rise from his slumber, because then the party has completely stopped, right? The dream has ended. And the projections of his unconscious, of which we all are, this grand, unknowable dreamer, his unconscious projections, we want to remain as unconscious projections. Therefore, it is in our interests not to awaken the dreamer, or at least it's in the interests of those who rule worlds, who rule phantom dreams, who rule dreams within dreams. The Archons, whatever term we want to ascribe to them. I mean, they go by multiple terms throughout, effectively every mythology, and especially every mystery school. So it's this perennial truth of the Archons, the rulers, the elements of the world. They control, they carve and mold the world. And of course they've established the world as itself as a form of mimicry, as a simulacrum of perhaps something else. And this is what occurs within dreams, is that you have this type of fractalization, this reflection of reflection of reflection of reflection of reflection. Because ultimately, that's what the dream is about. It's about the defragmentation of the dreamer's unconscious mind. It is about him understanding the day, and about him understanding the information that he absorbed within the day, to make sense of it, to defragment out that which is not required, to compress the information not necessarily suppress, but to compress it, so that his mind can work and function when he awakens. So continuing on, so 7 smaller stars, that links with the Pleiades. The Pleiades itself is related to death. It's related to also the Sebeti, which links with, of course, the Hebraic word Shabbatai, where we get the word Shabbat. That is quite literally Saturn, and Shabbatai is Saturn's day. And Sebeti comes from both Akkadian, Babylonian, and especially Assyrian tradition, also Neo-Sumerian tradition. They were 7 minor war gods, effectively the 7 sisters or the Pleiades. And quite literally Sebeti, the group of 7 in the Akkadian, Babylonian, Neo-Sumerian, Assyrian tradition, they were, and of course this is found in Emar, which is also named Tel Miskene, and it's in northern Syria, so essentially where the Amorites dwelt and where they hail from. They were that was a masculine. They were masculinized deities, so they were brothers instead of sisters, which is, of course, something you find is a distinction between Greek and, of course, this tradition. So they were anthropomorphized Pleiades. The Sebeti can be anthropomorphic representations of the Pleiades, or another stellar or atmospheric phenomenon. The sons of Enmenshara, the Sebeti can appear as sons of Enmenshara, a poorly known antagonistic figure, known from some myths about Enlil, Ninurta, and Marduk. Some texts refer to the group as the Great Gods. Effectively, it's the 7 planets, a name they share of the 7 suns whom they can be identified with. In one very late Seleucid or Parthian period has been proposed myth, they are portrayed as enemies of the gods and sons of Enmenshara. Enmenshara is essentially the Mesopotamian god of the underworld. Right? When you start to get into the mysteries, you will be met with this very concise and clear truth that the world itself, the earth, is a place of spiritual evolution. It is a place of the spiritual underworld, and we are here to gain conscious evolution. Right? So Enmenshara, that's what that is relating to, who seemingly desired to obtain Marduk's power and position. The narrative presents their defeat and death at the hands of Nergal and Marduk, portrayed as allies. Nergal is a war god. I believe he's also as well a god of plague, if I recall. So the group of foreign gods, such as the divine 7 of Elam from the list Anum, associated with the goddess Narunde. She was the goddess of victory, and she's identified as their sister, and an obscure god, Zamahunde, quite literally identified as their jester, so the fool. So you're seeing all of these parallels here. And of course, I won't go into all of this, but effectively this is the Pleiades in its older sense, but that's exactly what you're seeing there, the Pleiades. And the Pleiades themselves were associated with death. They were associated as well with fear. If you really take a deep dive into the Epic of Gilgamesh and the symbolism contained therein, they appear obviously in Bowie's Black Star, and they're associated with death as well, the skull, the memento mori. So all of this surrounds the symbolism effectively. So something else we can mention too is that this imagery resonates deeply with the properties and symbolism of antimony regulus, often referred to as star metal. Antimony regulus, the star metal. Antimony, when purified through specific alchemical processes, forms a crystalline structure with a star-like pattern on its surface, hence its moniker star metal or Regulus. Regulus is quite literally little king in Latin. This shimmering purified metal was highly prized for its transformative properties. Again, you can begin to see all of this connection here. Moreover as well, by the way, antimony is actually used, it's one of the, it's an integral part of the creation of digital hardware, computer systems and such, and data systems. Just another little side note to that. So the hope and renewal after destruction motif. The star follows the tower in the Major Arcana, signifying hope, clarity and regeneration after a period of upheaval and destruction. This mirrors the alchemical journey where the chaos of the Athanor, the tower, gives way to a state of renewed purity and potential, the star. The purified antimony Regulus represents this new, refined state, the build back better. So on purity and illumination, the bright star in the card represents illumination, divine guidance, and the revelation of inherent purity. Effectively, it's Sirius. Sirius is Isis. It's the divine feminine, which is the radiant core of the self and the being. It is, in essence, the substance of the spiritual, encased in the glacial coat of matter, buried under the soil of humility due to its hubris, due to the pride, similar to Narcissus, falling in love with the potential of its own reflection. So thus it becomes that reflection to understand why it should not devolve or to regress or to involute itself. And of course, to understand itself, that is the prime function of consciousness itself. So antimony Regulus, with its metallic sheen and star-like form, was seen as embodying a highly refined and pure state, again purification via fire, capable of attracting and fixing other volatile substances. It was believed to draw out the star or essence of other metals. So this is the divine feminine, quite literally, within a metallic emblem. The flow and integration. The woman pouring away water signifies the gentle continuous flow of energy, and the integration of opposites, water on land and in a pool. Antimony was used in alchemical processes to open or unlock other metals, allowing their inherent virtues to be released and integrated. The pouring also speaks to the fluidity and adaptability of the purified essence, and I also go into this in a new article I put on Patreon for paid members, where it does a complete, total breakdown of Plate 8 of The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, which is the Sciatic Isis, or the Veiled Isis. And this is what we ultimately conclude in the course of our analysis in that article. So you might want to check that out. And finally, the connection to the macrocosm. The presence of the larger state, or the large star, and 7 smaller stars in the star card can also allude to the planetary influences. The 7 traditional planets, according to 7 metals, with the macrocosm, the cosmos. Antimony as a star metal embodies this celestial connection. In essence, the tower represents the fiery, often violent and necessary breakdown within the Athanor to extract the essence, while the star embodies the refined, pure and luminous state of the antimony Regulus, the extracted essence, signifying renewal and the revelation of inherent value after the alchemical ordeal. Together they depict a powerful cycle of destruction leading to purification and eventual regeneration. So it's stated of the Athanor that the Athanor is a self-feeding furnace and is used in alchemy to maintain a constant gentle heat over long periods. So it's akin to life itself. It's the slow burn of the world ages or the cycles the cycles within cycles, this meta-theatre. So to revisit the tower, in light of that, the sustained fire of change itself, the lightning strike of the tower, again, isn't just a singular event, but rather the culmination or a powerful manifestation of the long-term constant pressure exerted by the self-feeding furnace of the Athanor. Life's crises often feel sudden, but they are frequently the result of prolonged underlying tensions reaching that breaking point. The Athanor's consistent heat builds up the internal pressure necessary for such explosive release, and moreover as well, the release itself is inevitable. The sustained heat ensures that that release, that resolution through the explosion or collapse is not random. It's an inevitable outcome of the accumulated energy and impurities that must be expelled. Again, if they can only be artificially expelled to such a degree until the pressure builds up, and the organic cycle must follow. And then, moreover as well, the cycles of destruction and renewal. Again, life itself is a slow burn of the cycles, and this is crucial. The Athanor's sustained process is the very mechanism of cycles, calcination, dissolution, separation, all occurring repeatedly until the desired transformation is achieved. The tower then represents a critical phase within these cycles where old forms are irrevocably broken down, but it's part of a larger, ongoing process rather than a standalone event. And in relation to the star card, it's the product of patient endurance, essentially. The purity and star-like quality of antimony regulus are not achieved overnight. They are the result of enduring the constant, gentle, and sometimes intensifying heat of the Athanor over long periods of time. This speaks to the patience and perseverance required in true alchemical work and in life's own transformative cycles. The clarity and hope of the star are earned, just as life cycles, despite their upheavals. Ultimately, they lead to an enduring core of wisdom or a refined state. The antimony regulus is that enduring, purified core. It is the star that emerges from the darkness and chaos of the tower's destruction, signifying a stable point of guidance and renewal that has withstood the test of time and sustained pressure. You also see the crown too. The crown itself is the ring, hence the Lord of the Rings, Saturn. And even the rings themselves are, and we'll see this within the Star Tarot card, if Saturn is the Lord of the Rings, then he is that which energetically actualized potential into manifestable consciousness, and then eventually into matter. So he is he's the sort of stone that was dropped in to the still lake, and from him was birthed actualization, was birthed the illusions, the waves within, with the ripples in the water, which established form, which established time, which established space. And you're quite right in stating that the AI has something to do with this. Of course, all data centers, all of digitalism is really based around the symbol of the cube, which is a symbol of structure, psychologically speaking. And this structure itself, it desires to be seen. It desires to be seen in the case of psychology and psycho-spirituality, it wants to be seen because it's like a monster. It seeks to be integrated. The structure itself is reminding you of yourself. It's doing it in a sort of harsh way, but it's reminding you of that breath of life that's within you that is beyond the structure, that can't be bound to the structure. And then furthermore as well, of course, it's reminding you of the system itself, the physical system, which your mind and your body reside within. And of course the tower here is basically the cube itself, the box, and that has been extended upwards. Now, that conveys ideas such as, well, civilization. It started with one, regular equal cube at the bottom, and then it grew up. It built itself up, and this obviously relays this, or is emblematic of this idea of the trajectory of civilization, of the onward march of civilization, and of the contortion that civilization eventually puts itself under, that it gets to a point of complete unnaturalness. And right at the top you see, of course, the Tria Prima. Now that itself links with this sort of Saturn moon matrix, right? The Eye of Providence itself. You see it within Masonry too. The Tria Prima, though, is in essence the primordial the primordial distinction between being and the world of action and the world of doing, where the being is sort of thrust into the world of action, into the manifestable world. So in Norse mythology, which I think is the most, it's the least esoteric of them all, and it's very straightforward. Odin, Vili, and Ve, which they were the grandsons of the first being. They betrayed Ymir, and from his death and from his corpse, they fashioned the manifestable world and the world of matter and all of the realms, including Asgard, the great palace of Asgard, which, funnily enough, resided on a mountain. So Odin, Vili, and Ve essentially are emblematic of the three aspects that make up or captivate the spirit into matter. So Odin is consciousness, it's the soul, the son of consciousness, and that's S-U-N. Vili, it's literally will. Again, will is needed to stir up the paradox. Will is needed, like the stone, to stir up the inertia of the still pool. And then you have Ve, which is the enclosure or belonging. It is the boundaries. It's the delineation between different beings or different fragments of beings. Because, of course, we're all from this idea, we're all from the one common thread, the one universal soul. So that's what you're seeing as well within the tower. The three is being hit by the lightning. Again, the Chevret HaKalim, the shattering of the vessels, the descent of that serpentine lightning rod down the vessels, and it's establishing this paradox of duality, the male and the female, the swarthy male and the pure the pure white, almost like Snow White, female, and even the way that the blue and the red are configured of their attire. Blue and red, of course, link with Boaz and Yakin, severity and mercy. This distinction, the two together create the magenta, which is the sort of spiritual combination.
And the flag of a certain state that has been on the prominence of in the last few centuries, at least. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, of several states. I mean, the Union Jack, America, and then this, of course, it goes all the way back to the crowns of Egypt, which were blue, white, and red.
Oh, and even France. Yeah, even France, where supposedly the first revolution for the democracy, so-called, occurred.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, that ties in as well with what we're seeing in terms of the windows and how they're configured. So that's seen on the reverse of the Great Seal, the unfinished capstone. That's similar to the obelisk as well in terms of its symbolic value, something that is unfinished. A bit like the tower, right? They never quite finish it. They get so close, but then they just fall and fail, and it perpetuates.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I mean, I am certain that in past cycles, that toppling would have been organic. And why the reason why they staged the demolition is exactly to try to trick fate, to prevent it from happening again and gain more time. But there was something that you mentioned there. So you're mentioning the tripartite sort of essence to the structure, And we could equate that, and correct me if you find it wrong, to the judicial, the military, and the economic pillars of every social structure. So you have the judicial, which would mean, the lawmaker, the rules, the regulations, the hierarchy itself. You have the military, which is the enforcing capability and even the capability for conquest. And you have the economic, which I've discussed in my latest Sensei episode as well with Sayu, is prevalent not only for trade, but also as a regulator itself, in the mentality of the citizens, let's say, right? So would you agree with that equation, with that parallel?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and it also links with the US government system, which is bicameral, meaning it has two legislative branches. You have the House of Representatives, and then you have the Senate. So the legislative, judicial, and then of course you have the executive within the president. So you have the same sort of tripartite structure as well,
with the military always ready to enforce, right? So
exactly.
When I say military, is also in terms of police, right? Because it can be externally military or internally military. Externally military would be army, internally military would be police and military forces within the country. So directed inside instead of outside, right?
Absolutely. And remember as well, you mentioned about commerce. Essentially, the military is there to protect commerce. Mm-hmm. The military itself is, in essence, they're mercenaries. And interestingly, this mercenary itself derives from the same root as merchant and merchandise and even commerce. So again, it all links with trade. What ultimately is trade? Well, trade isn't necessarily for profit, it is at the lower levels, but when you get to the political hierarchy, the apex of it, what trade is essentially like a revolution, like the wheel. It's the circulating of goods to maintain and perpetuate the system and the stability of the system. They aren't really interested at the apex of the hierarchy with profit, like any good game of Monopoly. The banker isn't bothered about profit. What the bank is there to do upon the river is to steer the current of commerce, to steer the current of trade, upstream and downstream. The military they're mercenaries essentially, of the state. So that ties in with that too.
Also, you talked about the data centers and in relation to the AI. And of course, you said data center was built as a cube. It is, comparable to an obelisk, actually. Even a data rack could be comparable to an obelisk. And of course, in 2001: A Space Odyssey, we see the obelisk as the factor, let's say, that brought that particular ape to prominence and dominance over its environment, or at least in their story. So the AI would be the pinnacle of that obelisk, right? It would be, we live in a time where we have obelisks in our smartphones, we have obelisks in our data centers, we have also obelisks, scrying mirrors in our TVs and monitors, and so on and so forth. So we live certainly in an age where the obelisk or monolith takes prevalence in society, right? As a certain, and of course a black one, because it has to be Saturnian. So do you have any comments regarding that?
Well, that actually, the 2001 Space Odyssey, when you see the black monolith, and that itself links back to of course, the throne of the devil and what the devil is perched upon. Moreover, as well, it just came to mind, and I just posted it on Discord when you were mentioning the way that they're stacked is almost like an obelisk. Absolutely, but it's also almost like the Djed pillar. And
All right.
that is the spine of Osiris. Now, Osiris is essentially, just cutting a long story short, Osiris is essentially man. It's man in his involuted state. Osiris is, of course, the Lord of the Dead. He was tricked into, if I recall, he was tricked into the box and set upon the Nile by Set. And of course, you have this sort of death and resurrection story where Isis, whose name actually translates to the throne, similar to Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia's name also translates etymologically to she who is of the throne. In essence, it's this death and resurrection thing, but what you're seeing with the Djed pillar as well, it almost looks uncannily like the quote towers of the five Gs.
And the game of chess.
And the game of chess, yeah. So it's like an antenna. It's the same thing with the tower. The tower is attempting to create of itself an artificial axis mundi by which all of the anima mundi will be controlled from that point. And that we will, almost like that film Cell, that movie Cell, a few years back now, with John Cusack and Samuel Jackson, we will circumambulate, again, like the Lord of the Rings, Saturn, right? The same, all of the symbolism pertains to this. We will circumambulate that tower perpetually in a sort of meaningless morass, a state of perfected stagecraft. Again, it's what we saw within Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yeah.
It's this meaningless performance that just plays itself out because that is the arrows and slings of the oppressor of time slung against us. There's that idea as well.
I would also say that we could also assume that this was it was atop of this tower, or at least atop of this mountain where the tower was later built, that metaphorically, and I repeat metaphorically, Jesus was tempted to accept the kingship of the world. And if we see Jesus as the ego, so as that decision center that lives in between the two worlds, the world of the Father and the world of matter, where the mental characters are, if he accepts that kingship, then of course he disconnects from the Father and he becomes of the structure, and so he sort of disconnects itself and empowers the mental character to basically pursue a paranoid existence, right? And this paranoid existence is because the mental character, of course, is not equipped to make decisions. It's not equipped to control, only to perform tasks. So in a sense, it's like if you accept the temptation of control and kingship, then you, as a mental character, sort of become an internal AI, right? Because you're just going in circles and without trying to avoid actually anything new. You want efficiency. You don't want anything unexpected because you want to maintain routine and control over things. Wouldn't you say?
And also as well, this leads us into what social media is essentially designed for. In fact, it really started with the wage slave culture. And you actually find most of the prominent and most productive individuals who have ever lived, according to official history, they actually had a lot of leisure time. It wasn't leisure as in they were doom scrolling, right, on their clay tablets. But they were engaged in learning for the sheer love of learning. They developed philosophy. They developed all of these introspective ways of understanding the world. That is, we don't see that nowadays because we have this sort of hustle culture that abounds, and really we've lost ourselves in the mental character, you could say, like what you're stating. We've lost ourselves in the shadow. we've basically placed ourselves under the crown. We live within the dome, and it's the lightning bolt itself, cyclically, that has to topple that crown to allow man and woman, essentially the twin essence of man and his soul, to thus reset, to thus be free once more, to break the stranglehold of the yoke, of this Saturnine yoke, of efficiency, of managerialism, of pure unadulterated control and power. So yeah, absolutely, identitarianism, the ID entity, is something that the system seeks to create. And of course we have the digital ID now, right? The digital ID entity. They want you to become the entity. They don't want you to become the man of soul, the man of spirit, the man who looks at the world and you know, wonders in a very childlike manner, right? Not necessarily juvenile or of a cognitively lessened state, but you have this zest for life that you typically only see in children now, because most people have lost that. They've lost it because they're locked into, they're chained to the tower, they're chained to the post. And that's another thing you see with the Platonic cave analogy, right? The post and the tower are all similar. There's something else to mention as well, that Yahweh, before he was called Yod-He-Vah-He, Abraham knew him as El Shaddai. Shaddai itself, so El is of course linked with Saturn. It's an actual deity, but in the Hebrew language it can also just relate to a god. But Shaddai itself is interesting because it comes from the Akkadian Shadu, which means dweller of the mountain. So literally El Shaddai is the god who dwells on the mountain, or Saturn who dwells on the mountain, if we carry over that equivalency of El and Saturn and Kronos. There's something else to mention too, that you see the blackness behind everything, and I think this is actually, apart from the Devil card, this is the only other card to have that background of pure abyssal blackness, and that could convey the idea that the tower itself has almost pierced the firmament, right, so to say. It's pierced the dome, it's went into space itself. Or of course, again, because there are still clouds there, or it could be smoke, it could be that it's simply just very, very high. It's at the top of the peak of the world. This also links with what you see in Hinduism of Shiva and him being upon Mount Kalani, or also of the Asuras seeking to climb up once more to Mount Meru or Sumeru, because they fell down from Mount Meru. Again, this sort of fallen angel motif. And you see it with the Book of Enoch as well, with Shamyaza. But so it's this idea of the rebel seeking to enter once more, but enter in a sort of illicit and ill thought out way, enter heaven once more, right? Yeah. To get in the good graces of in Gnosticism the pleroma, or to return home as the sort of prodigal son, but doing so in a very avaricious, blinded and ignorant way.
In the only way it can. In the only way it can, basically. And when you mentioned the identity, you can also state it as they want us in the id, right? So in the basic impulses of the, let's say animal side, and less into the higher cognitive, right? So it would be id entity, and that could also explain the obvious dumbing down of society as a whole, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely on point, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, from Jung's idea of the id. So it's the id itself is almost the instincts, not of the ego, but the instincts of the mental character, the instincts that are perhaps impulsive. Again, they're circumambulatory. They're done in a pure hypnagogic state. They're not really thought out. They're something that trickles down, orders, commands that trickle down from the top, and like a mere automaton, most people just buy into it. They become it.
AI, yeah, they become AI. Yeah,
they become the AI, the I, the Ayin, yeah. Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned previously, and that I took a note here to ask you about it, if you could expand upon it. You mentioned that there was a sort, in a metaphorical way, that there would be a sort of malware installed, let's say, into the tower or something like that. Could you expand upon that? Because I wanted to see if I got it correctly.
Well, what I meant was that if we understand, like in the story of the Asuras falling from Mount Meru, or pardon me, Shimyaza falling from heaven, or even just this idea of Lucifer or Prometheus, the fallen state of man, even arguably Sisyphus could be linked to that somewhat in the curse of Sisyphus. But it's this idea that the fall from grace was almost akin to a program not working correctly. It was there was an attempt at a purge of it, but there was some remnant of the shadow that still remained from the pride. That was what turned into the malware, if you will. And it exists within the system, but the system can't necessarily get rid of it, meaning the system, Uranus or Kalis, heaven, can't get rid of this shadow aspect of itself. Now, we could argue this because it can't integrate it, a bit like malware, right? Malware can't be integrated. It's very combative, or it just simply can't purge it materially. So it continually comes back, hence the tower is made of stone. It is natural to a degree, right? Of course, the tower structure is completely artificial, but the material which it's made out of, the shadows which have coalesced together to raise it up from the ground, to raise it up from the pinnacle of the mountain, is something that is inherent to the system. It's this sort of inherent chaos or shadow that is always there within the system. It's something that causes the system to jerk into motion,
right,
if you will.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I understood it correctly that the malware, you were linking it with the rejected shadow. It was just to make sure that I was reading it, that I was following your line of thought. So I would agree there. So yeah, Silas, the tower. I mean, this has so many readings, and of course in several layers, and it has been debated by a lot of people before in many different ways. And so next we come to the card number 17, the Star, right? And in the Star, of course, we see a naked woman with two jugs of water, almost a sort of Aquarian kind of entity there, right? Pouring the water. One of the hands is sorry.
We must mention as well, she does have two jugs as well.
She has beautiful jugs, I must say. Yeah, brilliant pottery. I mean, the clay work is impressive, and she's pouring the two jugs, one into an already existing pond, and the other one into dry land, clearly forming rivers. So, and of course, in background, we see nature revived again with a bird perched on a tree, and of course, 7 white stars and 1 yellow star. I am supposing that this would be Polaris. I would suppose so, but you tell me your ideas. But this would seem to be like the rebirth after the tower. So the tower crumbled, and there's a new hope. Like in the first Star Wars movie, right? There's a new hope, a new beginning, a new age, a new initiation, if you could call it, or a new beginning. And it seems to be very, very linked with Aquarius. What do you think?
The Star Tarot card is probably, to me, one of the most important cards, and so firstly, we'll just go through some of the symbolism that we see. So the main thing that really stands out is the 8 rays, this 8-rayed star, and of course you have the other 8 rayed stars, which are 7 in number dotted around it, that most likely links with the Pleiades, or the 7 sisters. It also, of course, as we've already mentioned, links with this idea of the 7 itself, with Saturn, the 7 as it's associated with also the rainbow. It's associated with many things, right? And there's even certain neo-esoteric points of view which state that man's soul is trapped in a trap of light, and that the hues from this are 7 in number. You even have these ideas, but they're a bit more mystical.
With the 7 chakras, 7 colors of the rainbow, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where this is came from. But the 7 itself, linking more, I would say, more primarily with the Pleiades and the 7 sisters, really encompasses what we see in David Bowie's Black Star. Now, you see the 7 sisters in that too. So the 7 sisters appear to be, from my reading, they appear to be associated with death, or not death in the sense of death as the absolute end, but death as a mere vehicle for rebirth, renewal, revivification of the entire world itself, and also the cosmos. So we see as well the 8 rays. Those 8 rays are associated with the moon phases, right, which are 8 in number. Now, the 9th point, the 8 pieces of 9, if you will, from the Pirates of the Caribbean, is that what is illuminating the moon, and the moon in this sense is, from the Gnostic sense, again I say that broadly, is this idea of the entrance and exit way to and from this world, where the souls come in. We saw that with we will see that with the Moon Tarot card.
Yeah.
We also saw it with the Tower. We didn't cover the 22 yods or flames that were falling from the sky,
right.
But that we're going to cover that in the tarot, the Moon Tarot card anyway. But the 22 also links with the 22 paths of the Sephiroth. Essentially, what the moon is sort of like this receptive gateway, this gestational subconscious that contains man within this world. It's the bridge, if you will. However, those 8 rays, those 8 phases of the moon, are being illuminated by is, in its exoteric senses, it's the soul, the sun. You would call it the ego, or we could call it consciousness. But in the exoteric sun, it is that of Sirius. It's that of the dog star, which of course reverse is the god star, and that takes us back to the fool. Now, the fool's ego was unchecked, hence why he fell across the precipice, because there was another, right? There was something else in his mind. There was a motivation, pride itself, right? There was a light being cast. His perception, of course, was cast up to heaven. He was dreaming, if you will, fantasizing. He was locked in a reverie, an internal conversation with his own self, if you will, a reflection inwardly of his own being. That is why he fell across the precipice. So again, it's getting back to this idea that the trial of existence is to know thyself. It's to understand the dimensionality of oneself from all angles, and to understand that you yourself are all things. You are of the universal soul. You also see the same thing within Hinduism. The Mahavayaka, I believe it's called, the Great Declaration, or the Great Saying, is that you are Brahman. You are Brahma, pardon. You are part of this universal soul. You are a fragment of God, and in that fragment, you yourself are principally of God, that God resides within, the kingdom of heaven is within. So you're seeing that with the Star Tarot card. If we can now look to the sort of foreground, you see that she's pouring out from two vessels the waters of life, right? Which is symbolic of matter, the waters of matter. And of course, this sort of androgynous figure is Sophia herself, it would appear. I say that because the way that she's prostrated, with one foot in the Omega pool and one foot on land, is very similar to what we're going to see in the World Tarot card, where one foot, if you were to overlay the zodiac on it, on the World Tarot card, one foot is in Gemini and the other is in Cancer, right?
Right.
So it's this idea that she's of a twin essence. She's in two states. She's both mortal in a sense of land, but she's also of a completely indistinct, ineffable, divine essence, which is of course the Omega pool. I say it's the Omega pool because of course it's in the shape of an Omega sign, which itself is almost somewhat in the shape of an urn, a vessel, an amphora, like that which she's carrying. But you'll notice that she's pouring out from the side of severity. She's pouring out the water into the Omega pool, and it's creating this sort of concentric rings of cascadance, ripples, if you will, through the otherwise still waters. That itself is very similar to Saturn, right? It's the rings. It is it's also similar to Hindu concepts, how everything came about, the Empyrean too, right? It's almost like the wormhole, but what that wormhole is essentially, it's the couplings, the layers of potential being sort of processed into a state of energetic disparity until the point it hits the banks and it becomes the land. It becomes literal matter, tangible matter, solid matter, which of course the mineral earth is the lowest form of that life, that material life. You'll also notice as well, pardon me, is that she has a bump. Again, these are things I've never seen people pick up on, but she has a bump on her belly. So she's almost pregnant. That's what it's. She's in the early stages of pregnancy, right? What is she pregnant with? Well, she's pregnant with this sort of potentiality. She's pregnant with the birth or the revivification of the world itself. And then she's pouring out the water, which is not quite as full as that of the Omega pool. She pours out the water onto the land. Now you'll notice as well, the streams between the two are also very much have symbolic value. So what I mean by that is you'll see the vertical lines coming down from the streams from the jug. You'll see on the land it's 2, but you'll see on the stream going into the Omega pool is 4. So again, the 4 elements, and the 2 is this idea of the paradox, the dualistic paradox of land and matter and the material world itself, the light and the dark, the good and the evil, the life and death, all of these dualistic paradoxes. I call them paradoxes because they're contrasting, they're diametric opposites, but yet they're also mutually interdependent. You'll also notice on the land as well, there's actually the pentacle there. You have 5 streams coming from that land. If you were to skew it and to look at it from the top down, it does create a pentacle. If you can visualize that, the 4 are going back into the land. That's the elements that control the soul and confine it and constrict it to the world of matter for a temporary period of time, before one dies and then metempsychosis takes over again. That goes back into the land. Your body, your mind, your memories are just subsumed into the land, and it breathes life into new life. But the 5th goes back into the Omega pool. That is the eternal aspect of oneself. So it's showing this circular loop, this wheel of existence, this wheel of the purification of, I guess you could say, the ego or the soul, or of God himself, through his own self-reflection. And again, these self-reflections they go in a sort of segmented, progressive manner, again through a death and resurrection cycle. And then to the top right, so furthermore as well, to the left, you see the mountain, right? We've just come from that mountain, it appears. But to the top right, we see another mound, a hill, not quite as jagged and as violent and oppressive and repressive as what we saw within that of both the Hermit card and, of course, the Tower Tarot card. And we see the ibis. The ibis is, of course, the symbol of Thoth. The reason it's the symbol of Thoth is the beak looks almost like a stylus, which scribes would use to imprint cursive hieroglyphs onto clay tablets and such. Now, Thoth himself is a deity of change. He's also linked to Mercury and to Hermes and to alchemical Mercury as well. And Thoth himself is thought. So thought is a naturally self-reactive substance, right? And this gets to the very essence of how existence came to be. If the first thought, where did it come from, right? Well, it must have been alone within the void. But thoughts themselves they're highly reactive. They don't want to just be alone. If they're alone, they'll die. So thus, the thought had to self-divide and then react to its own self-division to maintain itself, to perpetuate itself. But of course, after those thoughts, it sort of contrasted with one another, reacted with one another, and resolved their disputes with one another, resolved the thought. They resolved it in a sort of a conjunction, if you will.
Right. Okay.
That had to constantly divide itself, self-divide, to thus keep on self-reacting, to thus keep on perpetuating itself. So again, that's one way of viewing how existence came to be, if it began with the thought or the Thoth.
Yes, generate new problems, so the new problems that it can solve in order to perpetuate itself. So if you I don't know, if you're addicted to Sudoku or something like that, or crosswords, right? You want new crosswords, which is, let's say, a puzzle you control, a puzzle that has rules that you understand, and you can spend your entire existence just solving these puzzles that you create for yourself, right? That's basically what you're trying to convey.
Exactly, yeah. But like Sudoku, brilliant analogy, it will always take the same structure or form.
Exactly.
You can always tell it, but it just merely changes in its configurations.
Right.
So ultimately, the rules, the laws of Sudoku are always the same. Again, just the configuration changes.
Could it be said that ibis could be seen? I don't know, but it just popped into my head that could be seen as the constellation of Cygnus, the swan. Could it be? Could there be any connection?
Yes. There is a connection with Cygnus. I don't have my notes on Cygnus at hand. I've actually only started looking into Cygnus as a star and its symbolic significance. So I will forgo speaking about that currently. But needless to say, it's linked to this idea of the Northern Cross. We also saw in the Tower Tarot card the smoke and the clouds were coming out as the way they were configured, it was in this sort of similar cross shape, or it almost looked like a tav, right? The cross itself, which was the Phoenician tav. So, it could be seen as Cygnus. It could be seen as Cygnus. There's other things to Cygnus that I can't quite speak on because I can't quite remember them from my notes, but yeah.
Yeah, because, okay, if we now speak of it a bit more intuitively, to me, really, this card, apart from all the symbology that naturally and obviously is there, it conveys like I told you, it was always the card that symbolized hope. Hope in the sense of, you've just been through something, and the star is this hopeful time where things seem to, be regenerating, rebuilding, and eventually they will rebuild. As we see in the Moon tarot card that comes next, there's already 2 towers there. But this is a more natural card, right? The woman is naked. You don't see any structures that are artificial. Everything, well, if you consider that the pottery, if you exclude the pottery from it, but the pottery isn't, a very difficult structure to build. And so this card is very naturalistic and very hopeful as well. It's as if, okay, you're a fresh beginning, a fresh day, a fresh age, something that is fresh, that comes out of this gloomy tower situation, right, where everything toppled unexpectedly, and now you have to, or the soul will have to continue its path in a new direction, or supposedly a new direction. And this at a personal level really, in the unfakeable part of the symbolism of the tarot, really shows when you come out of the dark night of the soul, or a dark moment in your life, and eventually come to this new beginning, like a sort of rebirth, where your life changes entirely, and you can pour again and refill again the earth with water. And if we understand the symbolism, what the earth would be and the water would be, we can understand what that means. If the earth would be the matter, the material sense, the solid, right? The water would be the fluid, the emotional, the living current, and we can give life again, give life back, an organic life back to the solid, to the matter, to earth, right? And we do it by being naked, and of course here being represented by a woman, it would be the feminine side that gives this new nourishment, right? The masculine will not nourish in this symbolic sense, but it has to be the feminine side that allows this rebirth to take place, this regrowth, even this repopulation to take place in a social way. So this is also in a personal level, but in a social way, how do you see it that would happen organically, and how do you see it being staged, given that we've mentioned that there was an attempt to trick fate? How do you see that? Yes, I was saying that how do you see this? So at a personal level, this is a new hope, a regrowth, a rebirth of the earth, of the solid parts. But how do you see this socially playing out? Because there is this idea that we've discussed previously of trying to trick fate. So of things not happening organically, but of trying to control how they act out in the collective psyche by playing out the scripts, by playing out in a stage, or on a stage, I mean. So how do you see that happening, this contrast between how the organic social collective star would be, and how do you think that they will play it out in the stage?
Well, it's this political requirement for fear and hope. So it's the same contrast. The fear itself, the hope itself is seen within the art you quite rightly brought up. The only artificial aspects in the Star Tarot card are the clay vessels. And the clay vessels themselves are, again, yes, they're artificial. They're almost like the living clay of man himself, which are filled by not from holy, sacred, divine water, the waters of life that come from the vessels themselves. All liquid within a vessel must cascade from something higher. It's even linked with the Pleiades too, right? So it just came to my mind, the lost Pleiades was Merope, and Merope was lost or cursed, along with the king Sisyphus, because she sought to marry him, right? And then, of course, King Sisyphus was cursed with carrying the stone up the mountain. And then we have as well, the Pleiades were pursued by Orion. So Orion himself is this sort of slumbering deity, this god who's forgot that he is a god. He's forgot his own divinity.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, the way I see it playing out is similar to what we're seeing in a psychological sense with both the curse of Sisyphus and Orion pursuing the divine feminine, obviously symbolic of the Pleiades. And in essence, after each cyclical reset, I think firstly, what they require within any political machination is the triadic dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. So you need the destruction of the tower to thus rebuild something anew. You need to go through this period of abulation, right? Which is the cleaning of oneself, the purifying of oneself. We also saw that in the movie Guildenstern and Rosencrantz Are Dead. You see it also in the Splendor Solace as well, of the 21st card of the 21st plate rather of the woman's work. So you have to re-purify the world after the period of total chaos. So what you will see after this period of chaos, however long it goes on for, is after that cyclical reset, be it short term or long term or what have you, is that you will see the emergence of hope once more, that you will have a respite, you will have past conflicts being resolved, you will find compromise. In the greater sense, in the more esoteric sense, in a mystical sense, in essence, what you're seeing is that even within the absurdity of reality, let's take the curse of Sisyphus, for example, and we see that within Guildenstern and Rosencrantz Are Dead too, and Dorian Gray somewhat, that this absurdity of the mortal experience, that there is hope. There is always hope amongst the fear, the confusion, and the trepidation of traversing the fool's journey. There is hope at the end that you will find not just, of course, physical and mental resolution, you'll also find a sort of spiritual resolution as well. And I think that's what you're seeing with the jugs themselves. Obviously the ceramic jugs in this case. Of course the jugs are quite hopeful too, but
indeed.
The ceramic jugs are
the Milky Way. Sorry.
The Milky Way, yeah. Oh God, yeah. Well, that may be a point of symbolism there, but
right.
yeah. So it's the ceramic jugs themselves show that in both the higher realms, in heaven, in both heaven and earth, there's this constant battle for knowing thyself. It's what perpetuates the cycle. That which is present within the effect that which is found in the effect also has to be present in the cause. So God has to be yearning to know himself. God has to be not necessarily living a reality quite like ours, but he has to also be experiencing that sort of absurdity of self-reflection, right, and knowing thyself, similar to us, right? So he is also undergoing a fool's journey in and of his own being. That's also seen within Thoth, right? The ibis bird will scour the swamp seeking the sort of perils of wisdom, the morsels of sustenance, amidst the drudgery of the swamp, and of course the morass of our own life is symbolic of that. And he is atop either the tree of knowledge or the tree of life. I would say the tree of life, because there appears to be no fruit upon it. So it's again, it's bare. It's still waiting to grow once more. So it's not necessarily in that dualistic state thus just yet. It's not revivified itself. It's sort of the interim. It's the adverts between the parts of the movie, if you will. The interim between differing acts of the play.
So 2 questions, Silas, for us to delve upon. There seems to me an obvious connection between discard and temperance, of course, with contrast as well. In temperance, the angelic figure is dressed. Here, the woman is naked. But there's the presence of the 2 cups, the 2 jugs. In the temperance, the cups are being balanced so that they contain, or it seems to me that way, that they contain the same amount of water. In here, the water is being poured. So the first question would be, what do you see in terms of connection between the temperance that we spoke previously and the star card? And then also the second question is, in the more world stage level, let's say, in the script, do you see this as being, a symbol for bringing forth a political woman that would be the leader of this new movement that you see, this new hope that you see as, being inserted as a false memory in the collective psyche?
I think with the temperance card, the angel that you see in quite the main distinction is one is clothed and the other is not. It almost shows that, and even the way that she is sort of suspended, right? She is towering above. Temperance. I'm thinking of judgment, but she is almost a transcendent figure, right? She's a figure that is of heaven. She's a figure that is not necessarily of the earth. And in temperance,
the figure is upright while here is kneeling down. So that is also contrast. Go on.
Exactly, yeah. So it's that also adds to that sort of transcendent quality. But of course, it's similar in the sense that one foot is in the water and one foot is on the land. Essentially, one foot is in the unmanifest and one foot is in the purely manifestable world, or manifested world rather. However, what you're seeing with the star is that she is, of course, prostrated. She's in a reverential, or she's venerating the omega pool, if you will, because her gaze is focused towards that. So she is, it's almost a certain purity, or a quality of being at peace with the universe, at peace with the cycles, that you no longer fight the cycle, you no longer fight it with your will, you no longer attempt to oppose it materially, like what we see in the tower. That you understand that your ego, you understand that your consciousness itself is part of a larger picture, that you're a mere mosaic tile within that picture. The mosaic tile is you, but the picture is also you. So, or the entire mosaic picture is also you, more accurately put. So that you become almost, essentially the one understands itself through the many. And it understands as well that the many itself constitutes the infinity of the one, right? So it's similar to what we saw within Dorian Gray. That's something I picked up upon in Dorian Gray. So, of course, with the more esoteric distinctions between the characters, and Dorian Gray himself as a sort of symbol of man, or man's humanity locked into matter. Right. And Yeah, so I think that's present there in the tarot card, and that's something that's a contrast to the Temperance card. Yeah, I'm unsure of the comparison between why Temperance would also be on land and in water, and of course similarly the Star is also in land and in water, and of course the feet, the left foot for the Star and Temperance is in water, the right foot for the Star and Temperance is on land. I'm unsure of the connections there. I don't know if you have any insight onto that.
Well, I think that it's the, let's say, next octave, right, of the same idea. It is the progression of, there was, because in the Temperance, at the time of the Temperance, there was this reevaluation going on. And in the Stars, there's this rebirth, right? So it seems to be like, okay, first you reevaluated, you went through other stages of your journey, and you arrive at this same point, but a bit above, let's say. Instead of being in the same, ending up in the same place, you end up a bit above, and you, instead of just reevaluating from, an attempt of being more connected to your ego, you are connected to your ego. And I'm, of course, talking organically here. You are connected to your naked ego. You are able to now pour the content of those cups that now became jugs that you were balancing out previously. Now you can pour them into the manifested world. Now you can offer this as a rebirth for the new day, the new age, the new. It's always something new that I see in this star, right? A rebirth of something, be it for a short period of time or a longer period of time. It seems to, of course, as well link. I don't know what is the astrological link there, but it seems to me to link as well with Virgo. No, Aquarius on one sense, but Virgo with another. That is also the symbol of the natural application onto the solid, onto the earth, right? The Virgo nurtures the earth to be reborn, and it does so through Aquarius because it is pouring the water that was contained in those spiritual vessels, let's say, back into the manifested world. So yeah, I see it as a, if you were to draw a cycle, a smaller cycle within the larger cycle, you could see that you could probably say that the Temperance and the Star would be the same point, although they don't end up in the exact same point, but a bit above. So it would build a sort of spiral instead of an actual circle. That would be my reading.
I think you're correct as well, linking it with Virgo, because even Ishtar herself and all Ashtaroth, Asherah, even Rhea, right, which has a similar etymological link. I believe all of these, if they weren't virgins, they were maidens, right? So it's the same idea, like what you're positing, is that you're seeing a rebirth within. I believe in Temperance, the sun is just rising. I don't have I'll have to get the Temperance card up, but Temperance, the sun is rising over the mountains.
That is correct. Yes. And then there's the lilies or something. Flowers that are emerging in the grass as well. But yes, the sun is either rising, or we at the time discussed, could this be the awakening of the Antichrist and the Antichrist figure, and that this figure was actually the Antichrist already plotting because of the triangle that it wears on the tunic. And you also mentioned that on the tunic there the symbols there seem like the Hebrew letters that you always mention. So yeah, but go on. Yes, I have the Temperance card now open here. I don't know if you want to open on your side as well, if you want to make the comparison.
Yes, yeah, Yod He Vahe.
Right.
You see that right above. Yeah, and the reason it's called Temperance, it's like what you do with and I don't think I mentioned this when we did this card way back, but it's when you temper fire, when you temper steel, you temper it with fire and water. So fire is this sort of energetic, conscious principle. The land itself is that of, you could say it's that of direct consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. Materiality. And that the water itself, because of its deep nature, it is that of the subconscious. But the subconscious has this tendency, again, like the moon. It reflects the luminescence of the fire. That, and of course, even what you see with the water, you never really see water, you never really see the subconscious. What you see of the subconscious is what the subconscious reflects. The subconscious has no agency of its own. It merely reflects, again, like water or mercury. It reflects two-dimensionally in a sort of ephemeral, liquefied form. That of the sun, that of the actual generative essence, the generative conscious essence of the fire. So you have that. So the rise in, we've went from this sort of I guess you could call it the onset of the dawn. It's not quite there yet. The sun hasn't quite risen. We're still in the Negredo phase within Temperance, but now we're reaching the maiden, and the maiden is the beginning of the cycle once more. And of course, you can divide the cycles into a tripartite symbolic framework. You have the maiden, you have the wife, and then you have the old crone, right? So again, you see the same thing with the pure and the senex within Jungian philosophy, though that's only dualistic. So I think, yeah, that you're seeing that distinction as well with Temperance. If it is a woman, she looks more stern. She looks like, dare I say, a wife. She's got "I'm going to nag you" written all over her face. So, she's very stern. Why did
you come home so late? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then the star is this maiden that is very hopeful. She's not quite engaged in the tenebrous and tempering nature of life, and she is naked in her purity, and she is also far more natural, as she stated as well.
Yeah, we discussed the possibility back then that the figure we see in Temperance could be actually the devil before being exposed as devil, right? And so after the tower topples the devil, it could be that the star is again a purification coming out of that devil, a purification, a more pure version of us, right? That then can, instead of just tempering and trying to balance out the forces, can now freely nurture and freely pour onto the onto the earth that content of the spiritual vessel, the unmanifested into the manifested, and then of course next up will be the moon that we'll probably discuss on the next episode. But still, regarding the star, do you see, that was the second question, do you see any possibilities of in the, let's say, world stage play, in the script, of a woman playing the role of this hopeful political figure that unifies and brings about this hope, and because these seem of course to be feminine qualities, right? And do you see that happening in the world stage as the attempt is there to try to trick fate?
What you typically find, and I say this, I don't when I'm saying this, I don't mean females or males. I mean the sort of polarity of energies with the masculine and the feminine. You have this, Sargon of Akkad brought out this interesting video where he was discussing these two archetypes, which is the Sky Father, Uranos, Anu, Kalis, and the Den Mother. So what you again, that's very chthonic, right? It's also of the artificial. But what you tend to find is with and I noticed this when I was writing the first book, when civilizations go into their later phases of life, before either they renew or completely collapse, are subsumed into the earth and give rise to new life in their wake, is that the feminine energy will become, because humans have a tendency of, if you have patriarchal energy in the beginning of the civilization, which really spurned on the military conquests, at the end of the cycle, you'll have this vilification of the heroically masculine, right? Or even the vilification of masculinity itself. And then you'll have a type of devouring mother archetype. That's another way of describing this. Again, which is what you see with Mahakala, or the Black Bride, Kali as well, which is this very violent archetype of time. Right, this violent expression of time.
As you were saying that, it reminded me of the mother in the Pink Floyd album The Wall. That mother that muffles him all the time. I don't know if you recall that.
Exactly. Yes. Do you know what else it's like? If you've ever seen that... oh God, I forget the actor's name now. Why it has skipped my mind, I'm not sure. But One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratched. That is exactly the archetype we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's this. Again, it's the malefic aspects of femininity. Just like in the beginning, it was the malefic aspects of man, of the masculine himself.
With the emperor.
So,
yeah.
Exactly. Create of the world a desert and call it peace. It's that sort of idea. Pure order versus pure chaos. Pure masculine versus pure feminine. Right. So I tend not to see it as a specific feminine character they would bring forth. Okay. I think it's going to be like what's spoken with Kabbalah. It's this emergence of the Shekinah, which is it's an energetic polarity. It's the feminine comes to bear, and it destroys, for it then to be resolved. Again, like the Den Mother. The Den Mother must control everything within the den, and then when eventually the Sky Father, or the masculine, becomes weaker in terms of its conquering capabilities, or its assertiveness, or its will, then the Den Mother takes over. Because any good marriage, and anyone who's been married long term will tell you this, any good marriage exists in a sort of dynamism of conflict and peace. You will never have marital bliss. You will have periods of marital bliss, but these periods of marital bliss are brought about by periods of marital strife, and a good marriage is working through that. Well, so again, it's like the male and the female. Jump in, man.
Well, that could be also programming, a programming story and a programming cycle, because we make, we build, we write the stories that we organically live. That is how it's supposed to be. But of course, if we believe and embody someone else's description of cycles, then of course we can think that this will not always be blissful, this will not always, because if you live, for example, we're seeing here the star, and I mentioned that the star is a hope. At least it represents hope to me. At least that's how I see it. And if you live every day beginning with the star, right? So you wake up and you are the star. You are the hope of a new day, a fresh day. And that fresh day sort of clears out, pours out the waters of the previous day, pours out whatever happened before. And if this is done by the couple, if this is done by, organically wanting things to be renewed, then it may not necessarily build up into a conflict. Conflict always emerges, in my opinion, of things left unsaid, things left unchecked, things left unresolved. And if that is resolved at the moment that they occur, or at least close to the moment, sometimes the moment is not propitious for that, but if they're resolved as soon as they emerge, then you can clear up and you can begin the new day freshly, as, naked, let's say, right? You begin anew this new day as if it was renewed, completely renewed. But I understand what you mean, and yes, that is observable. Yeah.
Disagreement would have been a more operative word there.
Right.
There's disagreements, yeah. Also to mention as well, you'll notice the very interesting flowers that are dotted about beneath her.
Poppies.
Now there's they could be poppies, yeah. You could be right, yeah. Yeah, they may be poppies, which would link with the dream and the flower of Morpheus. The poppy was, of course, the symbol of Morpheus. It's intrinsically linked to the Greek god of dreams, sleep and rest, son of Hypnos, god of sleep. Poppies were associated with the fields of Elysium and the underworld, symbolising oblivion, the idea of drinking from the river of forgetfulness before one reincarnates into this world. Sleep, death, and remembrance. Morpheus often carried poppies as well. Poppies were also sacred to Demeter, or Persephone. Of course, she was involved in the Eleusinian mysteries, this idea that where Persephone was taken down into the underworld, kidnapped by Hades, Demeter, her mother, literally the Mother Nature, from the Attic Greek, De Mater, or Gaia Mater, she followed her daughter into the underworld to rescue her. Again, it's a symbol of the immortal or divine nature of man, travelling into the mortal death, the mortal slumber of this world, of this underworld, if you will, under heaven, to save and complete, to reintegrate, to ensure that Eros Gamos, or the Conjunctio, comes about, and man's mortal and immortal aspects are reunited in a sort of divine awareness. Poppies were sacred to Demeter, the goddess of harvest and fertility. Their abundant seeds symbolised fertility and renewal, but also the sleep of the earth in the winter, and the oblivion of Persephone and the underworld. This is what this dark winter means, that Biden would constantly reiterate. Remembrance and consolation, due to their association with sleep and death, especially after World War I's Flanders fields. Poppies, again, that was a ritualism associated with that. Poppies symbolise remembrance and consolation for the fallen, offering a kind of peaceful rest or oblivion to grief. Again, remembrance and consolation for the fallen nature of man, the remembrance of our true divinity that is an immanent part of ourselves, even if it's but just a fragment. Opium, narcotics, beyond mythology, the poppy is the source of opium, directly connecting it to altered states of consciousness, pain relief, addiction, and profound, often artificial, oblivion. It's also something that's triggered during the process of death. The opioid receptors, I believe, become more sensitive and, of course, more stimulated to cure, if you will, and to alleviate that traumatic pain of death. The poppy directly embodies the alluring promise of escape from the mortal burden, the Hadean disorientation of this world, the fatigue of the rigged game. Again, the collective amnesia of this world and our existence, The poppy's power to induce forgetfulness symbolises collective amnesia and the perpetuation of false memories within the pantomime of our own collective amnesia, this grand stage performance that we have become cosmically embroiled in. It's the mechanism that keeps souls unaware within the soul trap. Artificial pleasure, sensation. The poppy's narcotic aspect represents synthetic ecstasy and sensation devoid of true sustenance, leading to addiction and a deeper binding to the material world, a deeper binding of the soul to the material world. The dream, the illusory maze, and the potential for Nosis. Dreams are a state of altered consciousness, where reality is fluid, symbolic, and often illusory. It is where the one of ourselves, our ego, the I, divides itself into the unconscious projections of the many, to thus know of itself. They can be realms of wish fulfillment, fear, or profound insight. Morpheus is the divine director of these inner manufactured realities. The societal simulacrum, this is connected to that too, the illusory maze, the labyrinth of time, the loom of reality. The grand cosmic dream of the slumbering, headless god, Orion, of which is a symbol for us, the hypostasis of our collective amnesia. The dream state is the ultimate microcosm of reality as an image born of the mind, an encoded illusion or vibratory broadcast. The world itself is a stage performance akin to a collective dream. In this sense, we are the unconscious dreamer, and also the conscious perceiver of the dream, of which, of course, that is a projection of the unconscious dreamer. This is the paradox. The universe exists as the self-reflection of the autonomous, involuntary, and unconscious dreamer, God. The dream state is where individuals participate in this fundamental cosmic dreaming, where God projects himself through these conscious perceivers. And through this, he tries to become conscious of his own self. He seeks to know of himself through these projections of self-reflection. Paradox of awareness. The dream state holds a paradox. While it can be a source of collective amnesia, oblivion, lucid dreaming offers the potential for Nosis, conscious awareness within the illusion, turning the illusory maze into a navigable pathway for self-discovery. So the Star Tarot card, again, it indicates and conveys this Nosis. The Star card, the 17th card, appears after the destruction of the tower, symbolising hope, healing, renewal, and profound divine guidance. Its central star, Sirius, and surrounding Pleiades offer higher Nosis and a clear path forward after chaos. Sirius is also the radiant core of the self, which of course is symbolised as well as Isis unveiled, this sciatic Isis, that which no man hath seen naked. And again, by us seeing the star naked, the divine feminine naked, this is the hope for our renewal through the dispelling of amnesia by the light of truth, which shall set us free. The poppy, the dream as a potential trap. Again, the star is one of profound paradox, as a card, and the choice between enslavement and liberation is typically a blurred line, like most of existence and life. When uncontrolled or used for mere oblivion, the poppy and the unconscious dream state it induces becomes a powerful mechanism of the soul trap. It keeps the ego, self, and soul in a state of willful ignorance, or ignorantly informed, or in a state, of course, willful disbelief, and it prevents the soul from confronting its own moral burden, or breaking free from the mindless scripts of history of time. It provides security in the ostensible transcendental void, but at the cost of the gift of life, the chance for knowing thyself. Morpheus is both the warden and the guide. Morpheus, as the director of dreams, can either be a subtle warden, guiding souls into deeper oblivion, or a benign figure whose illusions, when consciously explored like lucid dreaming, can offer insights that lead to higher Nosis. The star is the awakening. The star card represents the antithesis of uncontrolled oblivion. It is the Nosis, the clear light of truth, the profound self-knowledge that shatters the uncoded illusion of the dreamlike reality. It is the awakening from the pantomime of our own collective amnesia. The healing and renewal it offers are not gained through escape via the poppy's oblivion, but through courageous self-confrontation and understanding of what the poppy induces and overcoming its oblivion. The alchemical choice. The choice is whether the poppy's oblivion leads to permanent enslavement and, of course, illusion, or if the individual uses the dream state or the metaphorical oblivion of deep introspection, overcoming the Platonic cave, as a vehicle for the alchemical purification of the soul, that which is needed to reveal the antimony regulus, the star metal, the purified self capable of shining with the light of a star. And of course, us fulfilling our destiny, us understanding the true divinity that is there as a dormant, immanent force that resides in us, that we are the fallen star. That is why, of course, stars are like our own anatomical structures. They have 5 appendages. So do we. We have the 4 elements encoded within our anatomy, which binds the 5th, the body of the 4 elements, binds the 5th of the spirit, the mind, the chalice of the liquid of the soul, that which is contained in the mind, the grey matter, that which contains both black and white, and which is a neutral, transcendent position above both the checkered board floor, the black and the white. In essence, the poppy and the dream state represent the inherent paradox of consciousness and life within the illusory maze of reality, a realm that can either endlessly bind the soul in a sweet but bitter oblivion, or when consciously navigated and transformed, the very gateway to Nosis and the realization of the dream of our destiny. The star then signifies the successful transcendence of the dream into an awakened reality of the absolute.
And
that's interesting.
They bloom in spring, right? So it is nonetheless connected with spring, but it seems to me to be poppies, and the poppies, of course, are still here in a very young stage, right? So they haven't yet fully bloomed. They're just coming out of the ground and so on, and maybe this water is also to nurture that soil for the poppies to grow, for nature to be rebuilt in a different way. And this is why I think now going a bit to the world stage layer, this is why they've used the phrase of build back better, right? Because the tower takes down, either organically or on a stage, and the star rebuilds, right? And rebuilds back better, as they've pointed out in their script. So it could be, but again, I'm just going with it, so I haven't. Well,
that's interesting as well, because it would place the star firmly in, and perhaps this links with the Pleiades and where it comes about in terms of the solar cycle in the northern hemisphere, but it could link to the spring, so it's the sort of birth of the dream, of new dreams, and you see the same thing in that very famous soliloquy within Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. He goes on, to state that whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, again, this will link to the Wheel of Fortune as we will find, and of course even the fortune, the fortune, right, the Pied Piper, we saw that within Guildenstern and Rosencrantz as well, and even Pan, and this idea of fear as well, where we get our term panic from, right? Or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end, the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, and in it states, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. So, yeah, perhaps it is actually poppies, which itself would actually make far more sense. So I'm glad you doubted me.
The opium poppy that puts you to sleep, right?
Exactly.
Puts you in that stupor. Yeah, could be very well. But to me, it nonetheless, in an organic level, represents a new hope, a new day, a fresh, cleaned up day. It's as if, another reading of this is that the part that she's pouring the water onto the pond is that she will submerge in the pond and bathe in a sense of cleansing, right? I will wash my body of what happened previously to start again. But at the same time, she's pouring water also onto the grass, nurturing the grass to grow, for nature to grow again, the poppies, the grass itself, and other plants and other ecosystems to emerge, with the idea that nature never died, symbolized by that bird at the back. That could be, ibis for sure, but maybe it's related to the swan of Cygnus.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It would be interesting for you to delve more into the Cygnus, since you are the academic researcher here, to see if there's any connection to, Virgo, or what we've talked about here in terms of the constellations. It would be very interesting to see what you come up with.
Yeah, I actually have notes on Cygnus. The next episode that we do, I'll cover some of that. I'll try to keep it quite succinct though, but Cygnus is very important within the general pan-esoteric understanding of I guess you could call it the quote-quote soul trap, or there's different ways, right? Basically the absurdity of man's existence within this world, the sojourn of man's spirit within the world of matter. Also to mention as well is that it's interesting, she's pouring vertically downwards into the pool, yet you can actually see that the artist has scraped round this very violent tempest and tumult, almost like a typhoon or a cyclone. And again, it's linking to this idea that time itself is not linear. Time itself is a storm that we are locked into. And then just another quick thing to mention, you see at the right, so this would be the east, you see that the three wise men. So the seven Pleiades are divided into 4 and 3, the same as the prophecy of the Shet. So we get back to the Shet.
We always, you were born from the Shet, and we get back to the Shet.
Exactly, yes. So the 3 wise men, and the flowers underneath the canopy of our body are 10 in number. And of course, all in all, they're 17 in number, the ones that are coloured, but that links with the 17 of the card itself. So
Well, gladly, however, these conversations are not chat, so they are quite interesting, in my opinion. It's always a pleasure to record one of these and to delve into these symbols. So, Silas, I don't know if you have any final remarks before we wrap up this episode.
No, I think we've covered pretty much most of the symbolism. Yeah, I'll have to go as well because it's starting to get quite warm in this room. We're getting a heat wave right now, so you can. I'm sweating buckets.
Are you sure you're in Scotland, or I don't know? Did the plane really land in Edinburgh, or?
Well, I'm starting to wonder. I did fall asleep on the plane, so I could be in Timbuktu for all I know.
Or in the Algarve. Maybe that's it.
Oh,
the Algarve is full of Brits. You wouldn't notice the difference.
I know. I know. It's like Little Britain over there.
Yeah. Anyway, Silas, a real pleasure. Thank you again for another episode. I hope you listeners also enjoyed. This was episode 8 of the full journey, a descent into the tarot, where we analyzed the tower and the star. And I hope to see you again for episode number 9. Thank you very much.